Chapter 2: Outside the Earth. The year 2137 was an era of rapid technological advancement. There were two important areas of transformation that happened during the 21st century. First, the genetic research that humans had been conducting since the 19th century finally had consecutive breakthroughs during the 21st century. Every breakthrough gave humans massive benefits. Genetic disorders were basically eradicated. There was a massive decline in terminal illness. The number of terminal illnesses that threatened humans dropped drastically from over 400 during the 21st century to 26 in the 22nd century. That was if an individual had money. Take, for example, a person's fundamental qualities. The fundamental qualities that were passed down simply through reproduction, such as speed, strength, and lifespan, exceeded 10% even in ordinary humans. The growth that resulted after a person consumed various genetic medications was even more alarming. The second area was the results obtained from the fervent galactic explorations of various countries. Nearly 100 years ago, countries like America, the Eurozone, Russia, and China announced that they found intelligent life outside of Earth. They had also established a connection with extraterrestrial life and tried to communicate with them to some extent. The result of the communication was the rapid breakthrough in the technology that humans always had major problems with. However, the invasion of intelligent extraterrestrial life also descended upon Earth. It was an invasion. Fortunately, humans did not lack caution and foresight. The invasion of intelligent extraterrestrial life was blocked outside Earth. However, the invasion did not end. The Blue Star Alliance was thus set up, and humans entered the Great Genetic Age during the year 2037. The genetic exams were also developed under such a premise. Humans who were enhanced through the use of genetic medication would have massive improvements in all of their qualities. Those were qualitative transformations. Even pilots, be it of fighter jets or spaceships, became much more skilled and faster at helming the vehicle. Their bodies could also sustain more drag. The Great Genetic Era was upon humans. Through the 100 years of research and constant adjustment, humans obtained a deeper understanding of their bodies and how they fused with the genetic medication that culminated in the genetic exam that Zhu was about to face. Just as Yu Zeping had said, the score he obtained from the college admission exams was just an entrance ticket. It was merely an encouragement to the students to push them to do better. Hard work and great effort would make a person's genes more exceptional. After the college admission exams, the students who met the genetic admission score would receive a Level D or Level C genetic compound chain allele elixir based on their grades. That was the scientific name of the elixir. It was more commonly known as the genetic liberation elixir. According to the explanation Zhu got from the genetic liberation elixir, a human's genes were made up of naturally stable chains. These chains were very stable. Humans who consumed the genetic compound chain allele elixir would later be called genetic liberators. It was worth mentioning that the genetic compound chain allele elixir differed greatly in their effectiveness as they ranged from level E to level A. Level E was the weakest level, while level A was the best. However, level A and level B genetic compound chain allele elixir were extremely rare. It was rumored that only the military and the Genetic Research Institute have the means to obtain them. They were also very strictly controlled. What was more common on the market were Level E genetic liberation elixirs. Level D and Level C genetic liberation elixirs could also be found on the market. However, they commanded a much fancier price. Level E, Level D, and Level C genetic liberation elixirs differed in two ways. The first was their genetic breakdown probability, and the second was the genetic liberation base points. There was a 0.5% chance that a person's genetic sequence would break down after they consumed a Level E genetic liberation elixir. The consequence of a genetic breakdown was death. There was no saving someone whose genes had broken down. The genetic breakdown probability of a Level D genetic liberation elixir was 0.2%, while the probability of a Level C elixir was 0.1%. However, the difference in the second area was not something that luck could make up for. It might even be a difference that could not be reconciled during a person's lifetime. Under the setting sun, Zhu looked back at the Jincheng 9th High School that most students called a training hell. He then squeezed into a maglev public transport. With the advancement in technology, the maglev technology that had been extremely expensive and highly restricted 100 years ago had become a useful tool to eliminate congestion in cities today. Half an hour later, Zhu Tui heard voices at the door to his apartment the moment he stepped out of the elevator. They were the voices of Auntie Ma, who lived downstairs, and his father, Zhu Jiangguo. "Old Zhu, how much did your child score for the college admission exams?" "My child didn't do too well. He just met the genetic admission score." Zhu Jiangguo was a rather humble man. Zhu Tui heard him say this when he reached the door of his house. "Let's not mention it. My child didn't do that great either." "He didn't do that great? How many points did he score?" Auntie Ma continued to ask. "It's just not great." Zhu Tui's father shook his head and was about to close the door. Auntie Ma became anxious. She grabbed on the door and asked, he should have a score even if he did not do great. Just how many points did he get? Improvement is back. Zhu Tui's father saw Zhu Tui and greeted him. Improvement was Zhu Tui's nickname. "Oh, Improvement is back?" Ontima quickly reached out toward Zhu Tui. "Your father said that you did not do that well. Just how many points did you get? Did you not even reach the genetic admission score?" "My child didn't do great either, but fortunately, he managed to meet the genetic admission score." Zhu Tui avoided Auntie Ma and did not speak for the time being. He threw a knowing glance at his father. According to what his father told him, neighborly relations were extremely important. A hand suddenly reached out from the slit of the door and directly grabbed onto Zhu Tui's ear. The hand then pulled him into the house, scolding as it pulled. "You rotten lad! You only scored 604. You almost didn't meet the double excellence score. How do I teach you normally? Mum, it's painful. Stop pulling so hard." As she saw Zhu Tui being pulled into the house by his mother, Auntie Ma's expression suddenly froze. She immediately became confused. "Goodbye, Sister Ma. I have to prepare dinner now." Zhu Tui's father let out an awkward smile and shut the door. Outside the door, Auntie Ma came to her senses and muttered softly, "It's just the double excellence score. Why did he have to show off?" In the house, Zhu Tui's mother glared at his father with her hands on her hips. "You always try to consider another person's pride in anything that you do." Improvement achieved his score through upright means. It's not like he cheated to get his grades. Why don't you dare to talk about his score? "It's because I'm afraid that it would not look good on her." "It won't look good on her, but will it look good on you?" "Mum, I'm going to take a shower." Seeing that the daily nagging was about to begin, Zhu Tui quickly used showering as a shield to avoid being caught in between his parents. "Something is cooking in the wok. I'm going to keep an eye on it." Zhu Tui's experienced father immediately saw an opportunity to dodge his mother's tirades. Dinner was a plate of braised pork, a dish of stir-fried lettuce, and a large bowl of fragrant oil-seared noodles. There were 3 boiled eggs in Zhu Tui's bowl. They were dipped in the chili oil in the noodles. They whetted Zhu Tui's appetite just looking at them. Those eggs were for Zhu Tun to replenish his energy. "Let's eat." Zhu Tui wiped his oily mouth when he finished his meal. He rubbed his stomach, satisfied. "Dad, this is the liability form that is needed tomorrow when I consume the genetic liberation elixir, as well as an insurance form. I need you to sign them and ink your fingerprint. I have to submit these tomorrow." Zhu Tui took out a piece of paper. His father did not look at the contents. Instead, he looked toward Zhu Tui's mother, Zhang Shuli, who had a similarly grave expression. He then turned his gaze toward Zhu Tui. "Improvement, you passed the double excellence score, but the genetic liberation elixir tomorrow still has a death rate of 0.1%. In reality, the death rate is a little higher than that. Are you afraid?" Zhu Tui first nodded, then shook his head shortly after. There were 23,000 students who passed and consumed the genetic liberation elixir in the Jincheng prefecture last year. During the process, more than 400 people suffered a genetic breakdown and died while they were consuming the elixir. Zhu Tui's father said worriedly. "Everyone feels that misfortune would never befall them, but it will all be too late when they get struck by misfortune." Nobody said a word. Zhu Tui's father went on, "Improvement, tell us directly if you are scared, or if you don't want to, or if you're fearful. We can refuse to sign this liability form." Improvement, it's your future. Decide for yourself. Even though his father's status was always fluctuating within the family, his mother, Zhang Shuli, would always be silent when they were discussing serious matters. She would not interrupt Zhu Jiangguo. Zhu Tui looked at the liability form in front of him and suddenly looked out the window. "Dad, if I have the chance, I want to go and see what it is like outside of Earth," Zhang Shuli pouted. Her eyes were filled with worry. A death rate of 0.1% might not seem like much, but it was a guaranteed death if it landed on Zhu Tui. Any parent would be worried. Zhu Jiangguo glanced toward his wife, then turned his gaze toward Zhu Tui. He picked up the pen and signed the liability form. He then pulled over his wife's finger and put their fingerprints on the form together. Zhu Tui's father suddenly stood up and handed the liability form over to Zhu Tui seriously with both hands. "Zhu Tui, from today on, you will decide on your future, but you have to always remember one thing in our eyes: it's best as long as you are safe and healthy." Zhu Tui nodded. Zhang Shuli wept without saying anything. "Mum, you don't have to be too worried. I passed the double excellence score. Not only would I be using a level C genetic liberation elixir that has the lowest death rate, but I would also receive a genetic activation stabilizing elixir that can half the death rate. The chance that I die might only be 0.05. Is there anyone who consoles people like you do?" Zhu Jiangguo glared when he saw his wife cry even harder. "With how brutally direct you are, you wouldn't be able to find a girlfriend in the future," Zhu Jiangguo declared. "Can you at least let us have a grandson?" His father was very experienced with such a situation. He tossed out every means at his disposal to change the topic. Zhang Shuli immediately stopped crying and started to plan out Zhu Tui's future. "Having a child is encouraged in this day and age. Improvement, you have to give us a grandson before you graduate." Zhu Tui fled. "Mum, we have 3 times the normal training today. I'm very tired. I'm going to rest early." This child, Zhang Shuli, felt a little indignant. "Don't forget your night lessons," Zhu Jiangguo reminded. "I've gotten used to it, Dad." As soon as he returned to his small room, Zhu Tui brushed his teeth and scrolled through his friends' social media activities on his communication device. They were all related to his classmates' feelings. Once 5 minutes was up, Zhu Tui turned off his communication device. As a high schooler, it was very important that he managed his time well. Then, Zhu Tui removed his socks and got onto his bed. He lay cross-legged and closed his eyes slightly. He started to breathe in through his nose and exhale through his mouth. He relaxed his entire body and entered a meditative state within a few minutes. After watching action cartoons or when he could not sleep after watching a horror film, he did manage to fall asleep when the sun rose. But the time for school had arrived. The pain was simply, this meditation night lesson allowed Zhu Tui to release his energy within a short time and enter a state of deep sleep. Furthermore, he would feel extremely refreshed the next day no matter how tired he had been the previous night. Half an hour later, Zhu Tui, who was still meditating, trembled slightly. He fell sideways onto his bed, his legs still crossed. Sometime later, the door to his room was gently opened. Zhang Shuli walked to Zhu Tui's bed and covered him with a blanket. She looked gravely at Zhu Tui for some time before quietly leaving the room.